And with that, we're going to bring down the music and have a little bit of a surprise for you guys. Welcome to another Sunday night edition of Accessibly Live Book Club Reading Room. In the main studio, we had a run-in with road construction. You gotta love it. I ran way behind, and I didn't get a chance to get everything out and ready to take over to the library. Unfortunately, yeah, it happens. You gotta love this time of the year. A lot of road construction during the summer months, especially in the upper Midwest. You never know, especially if you turn the wrong direction. I hope everyone's having a great evening. I am Joel K. This is the sister station to the conversation station that's on Thursday nights. We do public domain book readings here. Right now, we're actually in the middle of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle classic, Sherlock Holmes, the Hound of the Baskervilles. Many renditions of this book has been made into movies, and the Basil Rathbone, I think, did the best justice to it. There's been many versions throughout the decades, and I think that one was the best. And I thought it was such a good one to do. I thought, well, we'll do it on the show. 15 chapters, 3 chapters a night. We are going to be doing chapters 7, 8, and 9 tonight. And then once this is done, doing this live for you guys, we will actually get over to YouTube and pop this on so all my followers on YouTube can watch it as well. Welcome. And if you guys get a chance, both here on Twitch and also on YouTube, when you guys get a moment, please like and subscribe. It helps me out 110%. The algorithm makes it look kind of nice that, hey, somebody's watching. Yay! But without further ado and a sip of water, we're going to get started with the book, The Sherlock Holmes Mystery, The Hound of the Baskervilles. Only here on Accessibly Live, the Book Club Reading Room. Chapter 7, The Stapletons of Merripit House. The fresh beauty of the following morning did something to efface from our minds the grim and gray impression which had been left upon both of us by our first experience of Baskerville Hall. As Sir Henry and I sat at breakfast, the sunlight flooded in through the high mullioned windows, through the watery patches of color from the coats of arms which covered them. The dark paneling glowed like bronze in the golden rays, and it was hard to realize that this was indeed the chamber which had struck such a gloom into our souls upon the evening before. I guess it's ourselves and not the house we have to blame, said the baronet. We were tired from our journey and chilled by our drive, so we took a grave view of the place. Now we are fresh and well, so it is all cheerful once more. And yet it was not entirely a question of imagination, I answered. Did you, for example, happen to hear a woman, I think, sobbing in the night? That is curious, for I did, when I was half asleep, fancy that I heard something of the sort. I waited quite a time, but there was no more of it, so I concluded that it was all a dream. I heard it distinctly, and I am sure that it was really the sob of a woman. We must ask about this right away. He rang the bell and asked Barrymore whether he could account for our experience. It seemed to me that the pallid features of the butler turned a shade paler still as he listened to his master's question. There are only 2 women in the house, Sir Henry, he answered. One is the scullery maid, who sleeps in the other wing, and the other is my wife, and I can answer for it that the sound could not have come from her. And yet he lied as he said it, for it chanced that after breakfast I met Mrs. Barrymore in the long corridor with sun full upon her face. She was a large, impassive, heavy featured woman with a stern, set expression of mouth, but her telltale eyes were red and glanced at me from between the swollen eyes. It was she, then, who wept in the night, and if it did so, her husband must know it. Yet he had taken the obvious risk of discovery in declaring that it was not so. Why had he done this? And why did she weep so bitterly? Already round this pale-faced, handsome black-bearded man, there was gathering in an atmosphere of mystery and gloom. It was he who had been first discovered the body of Sir Charles, and we had only his word for all the circumstances which led up to the old man's death. Was it possible that it was Barrymore after all, whom we had seen in the cab in Regent Street? The beard might well have been the same. The cabman had described a somewhat shorter man, but such an impression might easily have been erroneous. How could I settle the point forever? Obviously, the first thing was to see the Grimpen postmaster and find whether the test telegram had really been placed in Barrymore's own hands. Be the answer what it might, I should at least have something to report to Sherlock Holmes. Sir Henry had numerous papers to examine after breakfast, so that was the time was propitious for my excursion. It was a pleasant walk of 4 miles along the edge of the moor, leading me to at last a small gray hamlet in which two larger buildings, which provided to be the inn and the house of Dr. Mortimer, stood high above the rest. The postmaster, who was also the village grocer, had a clear recollection of the telegram. "Certainly, sir," he said. "I had the telegram delivered to Mr. Barrymore exactly as directed." "Who delivered it?" "My boy here. James, you delivered that telegram to Mr. Barrymore in the hall last week, did you not?" "Yes, father, I did deliver it." "Into his own hands?" I asked. "Well, he was up in the loft at the time, so I could not put it into his own hands, but I gave it to Mrs. Barrymore's hand. Yes, and she promised to deliver it at once." "Did you see Mr. Barrymore?" "No, sir. I can tell you that he was in the loft." "If you did not see him, how did you know he was in the loft?" "Well, surely his own wife ought to know where he is," said the postmaster testily. "Did he get the telegram? If there was any mistake, it is for Mr. Barrymore himself to complain." It seemed hopeless to pursue the inquiry any further, but it was clear that in spite of Holmes's ruse, we had no proof that Barrymore had not been in London all the time. Suppose that it were so. Suppose that the same man had been the last who had seen Sir Charles alive, and the first to dog the new heir who was to return to England. What then? Was he the agent the others, and or had some sinister design of his own? What interest could he have in persecuting the Baskerville family? I thought of the strange warning clipped out of the leading article of the Times. Was that his work, or was it possibly the doing of someone who was bent upon counteracting his schemes? The only conceivable motive was that which was suggested by Sir Henry, that if the family could be scared away, a comfortable and permanent home would be secured for the Barrymores. But surely such an explanation as that would be quite inadequate to account for the deep and subtle scheming which seemed to be weaving an invisible net around the young baronet. Holmes himself had said that no more complex case had come to him in all the long series of his sensational investigations. I prayed as I walked back along the gray, lonely road that my friend might be soon freed from his preoccupations and be able to come down and take this heavy burden of responsibility from my shoulders. Suddenly, my thoughts were interrupted by the sound of running feet behind me and by a voice which called me by name. I turned, expecting to see Dr. Mortimer, but to my surprise, it was a stranger who was pursuing me. He was a small, slim, clean shaven, prim faced man, flaxen hair and lean jawed, between 30 and 40 years of age, dressed in a gray suit and wearing a straw hat. A tin box for botanical specimens hung around the shoulder, and he carried a green butterfly net in one hand. You will, I am sure, excuse my presumption, Dr. Watson, said he as he came panting up to where I stood. Here on the moor we are homely folk, and do not wait for formal introductions. You may possibly have heard my name from our mutual friend, Mortimer. I am Stapleton, of Merripit House. Your net and box would have told me as much, said I, for I knew that Mr. Stapleton was a naturalist. But how did you know me? I have been calling on Mortimer, and he pointed you out to me from the window of his surgery as you passed. As our road lay the same way, I thought that I would overtake you and introduce myself. I trust that Sir Henry is none the worse for his journey. He is very well, thank you. We were all rather afraid that after the sad death of Sir Charles, the new baronet might refuse to live here. It is asking much of a wealthy man to come down and bury himself in a place of this kind, but I need not tell you that it means a very great deal to the countryside. Sir Henry has, I suppose, no superstitious fears in the matter. I do not think that it is likely. Of course you know the legend of the fierce dog that haunts the family. I have heard it. It is extraordinary how credulous the peasants are about here. Any number of them are ready to swear that they have seen such a creature upon the moor. He spoke with a smile, but I seemed to read in his eyes that he took the matter more seriously. The story took a great hold upon the imagination of Sir Charles, and I have no doubt that it led to his tragic end. But how? Said Watson. His nerves were so worked up that the appearance of any dog might have had a fatal effect upon his diseased heart. I fancy that he really did see something of the kind upon that last night in the yew alley. I feared that some disaster might occur, for I was very fond of the old man, and I knew that his heart was weak. How did you know that? My friend Mortimer told me. You think, then, that some dog pursued Sir Charles, and he died of fright in the consequence? Have you any better explanation? I have not come to my conclusions. Has Mr. Sherlock Holmes? The words took my breath away for an instant, but a glance at his placid face and steadfast eyes of my companion showed that no surprise was intended. It is useless for us to pretend that we do not know you, Dr. Watson, said he. The records of your detective have reached us here, and we could not celebrate him without being known for himself. When Mortimer told me your name, he could not deny your identity. If you were here, then it follows that Mr. Sherlock Holmes is interesting himself in the matter, and I am naturally curious to know what his view may take. I am afraid that I cannot answer that question. May I ask if he is going to honor us with a visit himself? He cannot leave town at the present. He has other cases which engage his attention. What a pity. He might throw some light on to which so dark to us. But as to your own researches, If there is any possible way in which I can be of service to you, I trust that you will command me. If I had any indications of the nature of your suspicions or how you propose to investigate the case, I might perhaps even now give you some aid or advice. I assure you that I am simply here upon the visit of my friend Sir Henry, and that I need no help of any kind. Excellent, said Stapleton. You are perfectly right to be wary and discreet. I am justly reprieved for what I feel was an unjustifiable intrusion, and I promise that I will not mention the matter again. We had come to a point where a narrow grassy path struck off from the road and wound away across the moor. A steep boulder sprinkled hill lay upon the right, which had in bygone days been cut into granite quarry. The face, which was turned towards us, formed a dark cliff, with ferns and bramble growing in its niches. From over the distant rise there floated a gray plume of smoke. A moderate walk along this moor path brings us to the Merripit house, said he. Perhaps you will spare an hour that I may have the pleasure of introducing you to my sister. My first thought was that I should be at Sir Henry's side, but then I remembered the pile of papers and bills which with his study table was littered. It was certain that I could not help with those, and Holmes had expressly said that I should study the neighbors upon the moor. I accepted Stapleton's invitation, and we turned down together the path. It is a wonderful place, the moor, he said, looking around over the undulating downs, along the green rollers, with crests of jagged granite foaming up into fantastic surges. You never tire of the moor. You cannot think the wonderful secrets which it has contains. It is so vast and so barren and so mysterious. You know it well, then. I have been here 2 years. The residents would call me a newcomer. We came shortly after Sir Charles settled, but my taste led me to explore every part of the country around, and I should think that there are few men who know it better than I do. Is it hard to know? Very hard. You see, for example, this great plain to the north, here with the odd hills breaking out of it. Do you observe anything remarkable about that? It would be a rare place for a gallop. You would naturally think so, and the thought has cost several of their lives before now. You notice that those bright green spots scattered thickly over it? Yes, they seem more fertile than the rest. Stapleton laughed. That is the great Grimpen mire, he said. A false step yonder means death to man or beast. Only yesterday I saw one of the moor ponies wander into it. He never came out. I saw his head for quite a while along the time craning out of the bog hole, but it sucked him down at last. Even in the dry seasons it is a danger to cross it, but after these autumn rains it is an awful place. And yet I can find my way to the very heart of it and return alive. By George, there is another one of those miserable ponies. Something brown was rolling and tossing among the green hedges. Then a long, agonized, writhing neck shot upward with a dreadful cry echoed over the moor. It turned me cold with horror, but my companion's nerves seemed to be stronger than mine. It is gone, said he. The mire has him. 2 and 2 days, and many more, perhaps, for they get in the way of going there in the dry weather and never know the difference until the mire has them in its clutches. It is a bad place, the great Grimpen mire. And you say you can penetrate it. Yes, there are 1 or 2 paths which a very active man can take. I have found them out. But why should you wish to go into such a horrible place? Well, if you see beyond the hills, they are really islands cut off on all sides by an impassable mire, which has crawled around them in the course of years. That is where the rare plants and the butterflies are, if you have the wit to reach them. I shall try my luck some day. He looked at me with a surprised face. For God's sakes, put such an idea out of your mind, said he. Your blood would be upon my head. I assure you that there would not be least chance of you coming back alive. It is only by remembering certain complex landmarks that I am able to do it. Hullo, I cried. What is that? A long, low moan, indescribably sad, swept over the moor. It filled the whole air, and yet it was impossible to say whence it came. From a dull murmur, it swelled into a deep roar, and then sank back into a melancholy, throbbing murmur once again. Stapleton looked at me with a curious expression on his face. Odd place, the moor, said Stapleton. But what is it? The peasants say it is the hound of the Baskervilles calling for its prey. I have heard it once or twice before, but never quite so loud. I looked round with a chill of fear in my heart, at the huge swelling plain, modded with the green patches of rushes. Nothing stirred over the vast expanse save the pair of ravens which croaked loudly from a tor behind us. You are an educated man. You don't believe in such nonsense as that, said I. What do you think is the cause of such a strange sound? Bogs make queer noises sometimes. It is the mud settling or the water rising or something. No, that was a living voice. Well, perhaps it was. Did you ever hear a bittern booming? No, I never did. It is a very rare bird, practically extinct in England now, but all things are possible upon the moor. Yes, I should not be surprised to learn that we have heard is the cry of the last of the bitterns. It is the weirdest, strangest thing that I have ever heard in my life. Yes, it is rather an uncanny place to altogether. Look at the hillside yonder. What do you make of those? The whole steep slope was covered with gray circle rings of stone, a score of them at least. What are they? Sheep pens? No, those are the homes of our worthy ancestors. Prehistoric man lived thickly on the moor, and as no one in particular has lived there since, we find all this little arrangements exactly as he left them. These are his wigwams with the roofs off. You can even see his hearth and couch if you have curiosity to go in. But it is quite a town. When was it inhabited? Neolithic man. No date. What did he do? He grazed his cattle on these slopes, and he learned to dig for tin when the bronze sword began to supersede the stone axe. Look at the great trench in the opposite hill. That is his mark. Yes, you will find some very singular points about the moor, Dr. Watson. Oh, excuse me an instant. It is surely Cyclopedes. A small moth or fly had fluttered across our path. In an instant, Stapleton was rushing with great extraordinary energy and speed in pursuit of it. To my dismay, the creature flew straight for the great mire, and my acquaintance never paused for an instant. Bounding from tuft to tuft behind it, his green net waving in the air, his gray clothes in jerky, zigzag, irregular process made him not unlike some huge moth himself. I was standing watching his pursuit with mixture of admiration for his extraordinary activity and fear lest he should lose his footing in the treacherous mire. When I heard the sound of steps, and turning around, found a woman near me upon the path. She had come from the direction in which the plume of smoke indicated the position of Merritt House, but the dip in the moor had hid her until she was quite close. I could not doubt that this was Miss Stapleton, of whom I had been told, since ladies of any sort must be few upon the moor, and I remembered that I had heard someone describe her as being beauty. The woman who approached me was certainly that, and was most uncommon type. She could not have been a greater contrast between a brother and sister, for Stapleton was neutral tinted, with light hair and gray eyes, while she was darker than any brunette I have ever seen in England, slim, elegant, and tall. She had a proud, finely cut face so regular that it might have seemed impassive where it was not for the sensitive mouth, and dark, beautiful, eager eyes. With her perfect figure and elegant dress, she was, indeed, a strange apparition upon a lonely moorland path. Her eyes were on her brother as I turned, and she quickened her pace towards me. I had raised my hat and was about to make some explanatory remark when her own words turned all my thoughts into a new channel. "Go back," she said. "Go straight back to London instantly." I could only stare in at her in stupid surprise. Her eyes blazed at me, and she tapped the ground impatiently with her foot. "Why should I go back?" I asked. "I cannot explain." She spoke in low, eager voice, with curious lisp utterance. "But for God's sakes, do what I ask you. Go back and never set foot upon the moor again." "But I have just only come." Man," she cried, "can you not tell when a warning is for your own good? Turn back to London. Start tonight. Get away from this place at all costs. Hush, my brother is coming. Not a word from what I said. Would you mind getting that orchid for me among the Mars tails yonder? We are very rich in orchids on the moor, though, of course, you are rather late to see the beauties of the place." Stapleton had abandoned the chase and came back to us, breathing hard and flushed with exhortations. "Hallo, Beryl," said he, and it seemed to me that the tone of his greeting was not altogether a cordial one. "Well, Jack, you are very hot." "Yes, I was chasing encyclopedias." He was very rare and seldom found in the late autumn. What a pity I should have missed him. He spoke unconcernedly, but his small, light eyes glanced incessantly from girl to me. "You have introduced yourselves, I see." "Yes, I was telling Sir Henry that I was rather late for him to see the true beauties of the moor." "Why would you think this?" "I imagine that it must be Sir Henry Baskerville." "No, no," said I, "only a humble commoner, but his friend. My name is Dr. Watson." A flush of vexation passed over her expressive face. "We have only been talking at cross purposes," said she. "Why, you had not been very much time for talk," her brother remarked, the same questioning eyes. "I had talked as if Dr. Watson were a resident instead of being merely a visitor," said she. "It cannot much matter to him whether it is early or late for orchids. But you will come on, will you not, to see Merritt House?" A short walk brought us to it, a bleak moorland house, once the farm of some grazer in the old prosperous days, but now put into repair and turned into a modern dwelling. The orchids surrounded it, an orchard surrounded it. Sorry, guys. But the trees, as is usual upon the moor, were stunted and nibbled, and the effect of the whole place was mean and melancholy. We were admitted by a strange, wizened, crusty coated old manservant who seemed in keeping with the house. Inside, however, there were large rooms furnished with an elegance in which I seemed to recognize the taste of a lady. As I looked from their windows to interminable granite flecked moor, rolling unbroken in the farthest horizon, I could not but marvel at what could have brought this highly educated man and this beautiful woman to live in such a place. Odd spot to choose, is it not? Said he, if in answering my thoughts. And yet we manage to make ourselves fairly happy, do we not, Beryl? Quite happy, said she, but there was no ring of conviction in her words. I had a school, said Stapleton. It was in the North Country. The work, to a man of my temperament, was mechanical and uninteresting, but the privilege of living with youth, of helping to mold those young minds, and of impressioning them with one's own character and ideals, was very dear to me. However, the fates were against us. A series of epidemics broke out in the school, and 3 of the boys died. It never recovered from the blow, and much of my capital was irretrievably swallowed up. And yet, it were not if it were not for the loss of the charming companionship of the boys, I could rejoice over my own misfortune. For with my strong taste in botany and zoology, I find an unlimited field of work here, and my sister is as devoted to nature as I. All this, Dr. Watson, as you brought upon your head by your own expression as you surveyed the moor out of our windows. It certainly did cross my mind. It might be a little dull, less for you, perhaps, than for your sister. No, no, I am never dull, said she quickly. We have books, we have our own studies, we have interesting neighbors. Dr. Mortimer is a most learned man in his own line. Poor Sir Charles was also an admirable companion. We knew him well, and miss him more than I can tell. Do you think that I should intrude if I were to make a call this afternoon and make the acquaintance of Sir Henry? I'm sure that he would be delighted. Then perhaps you could mention that I that I propose to do so. We may be in humble way do we may in our humble way do something to make things more easy for him until he becomes more accustomed to his new surroundings. Will you come upstairs, Dr. Watson, and inspect my collection of Lepertravidid? I think that it is most complete one in the southwest of England. By the time you have a look through them, lunch is almost ready. But I was eager to get back to my charge. The melancholy of the moor, the death of the unfortunate pony, the weird sound which had been associated with the grim legend of the Baskervilles, all these things tinged my thoughts with sadness. On top of these more or less vague impressions, there had come the definite and distinct warning from Miss Stapleton, delivered with such intense earnestness that I could not doubt that some grave and deep reason lay behind it. I resisted all pressure to stay for lunch, and I set off once more upon my return journey, taking the grass-grown path by which we had come. It seems, however, that there must have been some shortcuts for those who knew it, for before I reached the road, I was astounded to see Miss Stapleton sitting upon a rock by the side of the track. Her face was beautifully flushed, and her exertions, and she held her hand to her side. I have run all the way in order to cut you off, Dr. Watson, said she. I have had not even time to put on my hat. I must not stop, or my brother may miss me. I wanted to say how sorry I am about the stupid mistake I made in thinking you were Sir Henry. Please forget those words, I said, which have no application whatever to you. But I cannot forget them, Miss Stapleton, said I. I am Sir Henry's friend, and his welfare is very close concern of mine. Tell me why you think that you were so eager that Sir Henry should return to London. A woman's whim, Dr. Watson. When you know me better, you will understand that. I cannot always give reasons for what I say or do. No, no, I remember the thrill in your voice. I remember the look in your eyes. Please, please be frank with me, Miss Stapleton. For ever since I have been here, I have been conscious of shadows all around me. Life has become like that of the great Grimpen Mire, with little green patches everywhere to which one may sink, and with no guide point to track. Tell me then, what is that you meant, and I will promise to convey your warning to Sir Henry. An expression of irresolution passed for an instant over her face, but with her eyes had hardened again when she answered me. You make too much of it, Dr. Watson, said she. My brother and I were very much shocked by the death of Sir Charles. We knew him very intimately, for his favorite walk was over the moor to our house. He was deeply impressed with the curse which hung over his family, and when the tragedy came, I naturally felt that there must be some grounds for fears which had expressed. I was distressed, therefore, when another member of the family came down to live here, and I felt that he should be warned of the danger which will run. That was all which I intended to convey. But what is the danger? I do not believe in such nonsense. But I do. If you have any influence with Sir Henry, take him away from this place, which has always been fatal to his family. The world is wide. Why should he wish to live in a place of danger? Because it is the place of danger. That is Sir Henry's nature. I fear that unless you can give me more definite information than this, it would be impossible to get him to move. I cannot say anything definite, for I do not know anything definite. I would ask you one more question, Miss Stapleton. If you meant no more than this when you first spoke to me, why should you not wish your brother to overhear what you said? There is nothing to which he or anyone else should object. My brother is very anxious to have the hall inhabited, for he thinks it is good for the poor folk on the moor. He would be very angry if he knew that I have said anything which might induce Sir Henry to go away. But I have done my duty now, and I will say no more. I must go back, or he will miss me, and suspect that I have seen you. Goodbye. She turned and disappeared in a few minutes among the scattered boulders, while I, with my soul full of vague fears, pursued my way to Baskerville Hall. Chapter 8. And you'll excuse me if I take another sip. Yahoo! The first report of Dr. Watson. From this point onward, I will follow the course of events by transcribing my own letters to Mr. Sherlock Holmes, which lie before me on the table. One page is missing, but otherwise they are exactly as written, and show my feelings and suspicions of the moment more accurately than my memory clearly was upon these tragic events could possibly do. Baskerville Hall, October 13th. My dear Holmes, my previous letters and telegrams have kept you pretty well up to date as to all that has occurred in this most God-forsaken corner of the world. The longer one stays here, the more does the spirit of the moor sink into one's soul, its fastness and also its grim charm. When you are once out upon the bosom, you have left all traces of modern England behind you, but on the other hand, you are conscious everywhere of the homes and the work of the prehistoric people. On all sides, as you walk, there are houses of the forgotten folk, with their graves in the huge monoliths which are supposed to have marked their temples. As you look at the gray stone huts against the scarred hills, you leave your own age behind you. And if you had were to see a skin-clad, hairy man crawling out from the low door, fitting a flint-tipped arrow on a string of his bow, you would feel that his presence there was more natural than your own. The strange thing is that they should have lived so thickly on what must always have been unfruitful soil. I am no antiquarian, but I could imagine that they were some unwarlike and harried race who were forced to accept that which none other could occupy. All this, however, is foreign to the mission on which you sent me and will probably be uninteresting to your severely practical mind. I can still remember your complete indifference as to whether the sun moved around the earth or the earth moved around the sun. Let me, therefore, return to the facts concerning Sir Henry Baskerville. If you have not had any report within the last few days, it is because up to today there was nothing to report to relate. Then a very surprising circumstance occurred, which I shall tell you in due course. But first of all, I must keep you in touch with some of the other factors of the situation. One of these, concerning which I have said little, is the escaped convict upon the moor. There is strong reason to believe that he has gotten away, which is a considerable relief to the lonely households of the district. A fortnight had passed since his flight, during which he had not been seen and nothing has been heard of him. It is surely inconceivable that he should have held out upon the moor during all that time. Of course, so far as his concealment goes, there is no difficulty at all. Any one of these stone huts would give him a hiding place, but there is nothing to eat unless he were to catch and slaughter one of the moor sheep. We think, therefore, that he has gone, and the outlying farmers sleep the better in consequence. We are four able-bodied men in this household, so that we could take care of ourselves. But I confess that I have an uneasy moments when I have thoughts of the Stapletons. They live miles from any help. There are there are one maid and one manservant, the sister and the brother of the latter, not a very strong man. They would be helpless in the hands of a desperate fellow like this Notting Hill criminal, if he could once effect the entrance. Both Sir Henry and I were concerned at their situation, and it was suggested that Perkins, the groom, should go over to sleep there, but Stapleton would not hear of it. The fact is that our friend, the baronet, begins to display a considerable interest in our fair neighbor. It is not to be wondered at all, for time he hangs heavily in this lonely spot as an active man like him, and she is a very fascinating and beautiful woman. There is something tropical and exotic about her which forms a singular contrast to her cool, unemotional brother. Yet he also gives the idea of hidden fires. He has certainly a very marked influence over her, for I have seen her continually glance at him as she talks, as if seeking approbation for what she has said. I trust that he is kind to her. There is a dry glitter in her eyes and a firm set of his thin lips, which goes with a positive and possibly a harsh nature. You would find him an interesting study. He came over to call upon Baskerville on the first day, and the very next morning he took us both to show us the spot where the legend of the wicked Hugo is supposed to have had its origin. It was an excursion of some miles across the moor to a place which is so dismal that it might have suggested the story. We found a short valley between rugged tors, which led to an open, grassy space flecked over with white cotton grass. In the middle of it rose two great stones, worn and sharpened at the upper end until it looked like a huge, corroding fangs of some monstrous beast. In every way, it corresponded with the scene of the old tragedy Sir Henry was most interested in, and asked Stapleton more than once whether he did really believe in the possibility of interference of the supernatural in the affairs of men. He spoke lightly, but it was evident that he was very much in earnest. Stapleton was guarded in his replies, but it was easy to see that he said less than he might, and that he would not express his whole opinion out of consideration for the feelings of the baronet. He told us of similar cases where families had suffered from some evil influence, and left us with some impression that would share the popular view on the matter. On our way back, we stayed for lunch at the Merripit House, and it was there that Sir Henry made the acquaintance of Miss Stapleton. From the first moment that he saw her, he appeared to be strongly attracted by her, and I am much mistaken if the feeling was not mutual. He referred to her again and again on our walk home, and since then hardly a day has passed that we have not seen something of the brother and sister. They dine here tonight, and there is some talk of our going to them next week. One would imagine that such a match would be very welcome to Stapleton, and yet I have more than once caught a look of the strongest disapprobation upon the face when Sir Henry has been paying some attention to his sister. He is much attached to her, no doubt, and would lead a lonely life without her, but it would seem the height of selfishness if he were to stand in the way of her making so brilliant a marriage. Yet I am certain that he does not wish their intimacy to ripen into love, and I have several times observed that he has taken pains to prevent them from being tete-a-tete. By the way, your instructions to me never to allow Sir Henry to go out alone will become very much more honorious if a love affair were to be added to our other difficulties. My popularity would soon suffer if I were to carry out your orders to the letter. The other day, Thursday to be more exact, Dr. Mortimer lunched with us. He has been excavating a burrow at the Long Down, and has got a prehistoric skull which fills him with great joy. Never was there such a single-minded enthusiast as he. The Stapletons came in afterwards, and the good doctor took us all to the Yew Valley at Sir Henry's request to show us exactly how everything occurred upon that fateful night. It is a long, dismal walk, the Yew Valley, between the two high walls of clipped hedges with a narrow band of grass upon either side. At the end there is an old tumble-down summer house. Halfway down is the moor gate, where the old man left his cigar ash. It is a white wooden gate with a latch. Beyond it lies the wide moor. I remember your theory of the affair and tried to picture all of that occurred. As the old man stood there, he saw something come across the moor, something which terrified him so that he lost his wits and ran until he died of sheer horror and exhaustion. There was a long, gloomy tunnel down which he fled. And from what? A spectral hound, black, silent, and monstrous? Was there a human agency in the matter? Did the pale, watchful Barrymore know more than he cared to say? It was all dim and vague, but always there is the dark shadow of crime behind it. One other neighbor I have met since I last wrote. This is Mr. Franklin of Laughter House, who lives some 4 miles to the south of us. He is an elderly man, red-faced, white-haired, and choleric. His passion is for British law, and he has spent a large fortune in litigation. He fights for the mere pleasure of fighting and is equally ready to take up either side of a question, so it is no wonder that he found it costly amusement. Sometimes he will shut up a right of way and defy the parish to make him open it. At others he will with his own hands tear down some other man's gate and declare that a path has existed there from time immemorial, defying the owner to prosecute him for trespass. He is learned in his own manorial and communal rights, and he applies his knowledge sometimes in favor of the villages of Fenworthy, and sometimes against them, so that he is periodically either carried in triumph down the village street or else burned in effigy, according to his latest exploit. He is said to have about 7 lawsuits upon his hands at present, which will probably swallow up the remainder of his fortune, and so draw his string and leave him harmless for the future. Apart from the law, he seems a kindly, good-natured person, and I only mention him because you were particular that I should send some description of the people who surround us. He is curiously employed at the present, for being an amateur astronomer, he has an excellent telescope, with which he lies upon his roof, the roof of his own house, and sweeps the moor all the day in hopes of catching a glimpse of the escaped convict. If he would confine his energies to all of this, all would be well, but there are rumors that he intends to prosecute Dr. Mortimer for opening a grave without the consent of the next of kin, because he dug up the Neolithic skull in the barrow of the Long Down. He helps to keep our lives from being monotonous, and gives a little comic relief where it is badly needed. And now, having brought you up to date in the escaped convict, the Stapletons, Dr. Mortimer, and Franklin of Laughter House, let me end on that which is most important and tell you more about the Barrymores, especially about the surprising development of last night. First of all, about the test telegram which you sent from London in order to make sure that Barrymore was really here. I have already explained that testimony of the postmaster shows that the test was worthless, and that we have no proof one way or the other. I told Sir Henry how the matter stood, and he at once, in his own downright fashion, had Barrymore up and asked him whether he had received the telegram himself. Barrymore said he did. Did the boy deliver it into your own hands? Asked Sir Henry. Barrymore looked a little surprised, and considered it for a time. No, said he. I was in the box room at the time, and my wife brought it up to me. Did you answer it yourself? No. I told my wife what to answer, what to write, and she went down to write it. In the evening, he occurred to the subject of his own record. I could not quite understand the object of your questions this morning, Sir Henry, he said. I trust that you do not mean that I had anything to forfeit your confidence. Sir Henry had to assure him that it was not so, and pacify him, giving him a considerable part of his old wardrobe. Mrs. Barrymore is of interest too, is of interest to me. She is a heavy, solid person, very limited, intensely respectable, and inclined to be puritanical. You could hardly conceive a less emotional subject. Yet I have told you how on the first night here I heard her sobbing bitterly, and since then I have more than once observed traces of tears upon her face. Some deep sorrow gnaws ever at her heart. Sometimes I wonder if she has a guilty memory which haunts her, and sometimes I suspect Barrymore of being a domestic tyrant. I have always felt that there was something singular and questionable in this man's character, but the adventure of last night brings all my suspicions to a head. And yet it may seem a small matter in itself. You are aware that I am not a very sound sleeper, and since I have been on guard in this house, my slumbers have been lighter than ever. Last night, about 2 in the morning, I was roused by a stealthy step passing my room. I rose, opened my door, and peeped out. A long black shadow was trailing down the corridor. It was thrown by a man who walked softly down the passage, with a candle held in his hand. He was in shirt and trousers, with no covering to his feet. I could merely see the outline, but his height told me that it was Barrymore. He walked very slowly and circumspectively, and there was something indescribably guilty and furtive in his whole appearance. I have told you that the corridor is broken by a balcony which runs around the hall, but that is resumed upon the far side. I waited until he had passed out of sight, then I followed him. When I came around the balcony, he had reached the end of the farthest corridor, and I could see from the glimmer of the light through the open door that he had entered one of the rooms. Now, all these rooms are unfurnished and unoccupied, so that his expedition became more mysterious than ever. The light shone steadily as if he were standing motionless. I crept down the passage as noiselessly as I could and peeped around the corner of the door. Barrymore was crouching at the window with a candle held against the glass. His profile was half turned towards me, and his face seemed to be rigid with expectations as he stared out to the blackness of the moor. For some minutes he stood watching intently. Then he gave a deep groan, and with an impatient gesture he put out the light. Instantly I made my way back to my room, and very shortly came the stealthy steps passing once more upon their return journey. Long afterwards, after I had fallen into a light sleep, I heard a key turn somewhere in a lock, but I could not tell whence the sound came. But it all means I cannot guess. But there is some secret business going on in this house of gloom. Sooner or later, we shall get to the bottom of it. I do not trouble you with my theories, for you ask me to furnish you only with facts. I have had a long talk with Sir Henry this morning, and we have had made a of campaign founded upon my observations of last night. I will not speak of it just now, but it should make of my next report an interesting read. Last chapter for the night. Chapter 9. The Light upon the Moor. Second report of Dr. Watson. It's really dry in here, guys. Sorry about taking the sips when I do. The Light Upon the Moor. Second report of Dr. Watson. Baskerville Hall, October 15th. My dear Holmes, if I was compelled to leave you without much news during the early days of my mission, you must acknowledge that I am making up for lost time, and the events are now crowding thick and fast upon us. In my last report, I ended upon a top note with Barrymore at the window, and now I have quite a budget already, which I will, unless I am much mistaken, considerably surprise you. Things have taken a turn which I could not have anticipated. In some ways, they have, within the last 48 hours, become much clearer, and in some ways, they have become more complicated. But I will tell you all, and you shall judge for yourself. Before breakfast on the morning following my adventure, I went down the corridor and examined the room in which Barrymore had been on the night before. The western window through which he had stared so intently has, I notice, and particularly above all the other windows in the house, it commands the nearest outlook on the moor. There is an opening between two trees, which envelops one from this point of view to look right down it, while while from all the other windows it is only a distant glimpse which can be obtained. It follows, therefore, that Barrymore, since only this window would have served the purpose, must have been looking out for something or somebody upon the moor. The night was very dark, so that I could hardly imagine how he could have hoped to see anyone. It had struck me that the impossible that some love intrigue was on foot. That would have accounted for his stealthy movements and also for the uneasiness of his wife. The man is a striking looking fellow, very well equipped to steal the heart of a countrywoman, so that this theory has something to report. That opening of the door, which I had heard after I had returned to my room, might mean that he had gone out to keep some clandestine appointment. So I reasoned with myself in the morning, and I shall tell you the direction of my suspicions. However, much of the results may have shown that they were unfounded. But whatever the true explanation of Barrymore's movements might be, I felt that the responsibility of keeping them to myself until I could explain them was more than I could bear. I had an interview with the baronet in the study after breakfast, and I told him all that I had seen. He was less surprised than I expected. I knew Barrymore walked about the nights, and I had in my mind to speak with him about it, said he. 2 or 3 times I have heard his steps in the passage, coming and going just about the hour you name. Perhaps then he pays a visit every night to that particular window, I suggested. Perhaps he does. If so, we should be able to shadow him and see what it is that he is after. I wonder what your friend Holmes would do if he were here. I believe he would do exactly what you suggest, said I. He would follow Barrymore and see what he did. But surely he would hear us. The man is rather deaf in any case. We must take our chance of that. We'll sit up in my room tonight and wait until he passes. Sir Henry rubbed his hands with pleasure, and it was evident that he hailed the adventure as a relief from the somewhat quiet life upon the moor. The baronet had been in communication with the architect who prepared the plans for Sir Henry Charles, and with a contractor from London, so that we may expect a great change to begin here soon. There has been... I'm sorry, guys. My eyes drifted there. There has been decorators and furnishers up from Plymouth, and it is very evident that our friend has large ideas and means to spare no pains or expense to restore the grandeur of the family. When the house is renovated and refurbished, all that he will need will be as a wife to make it complete. Between ourselves, there are pretty clear signs that this will not be wanting if the lady is willing. For I have seldom seen a man more infatuated with a woman than he is with our beautiful neighbor, Miss Stapleton. And yet, the course of true love does not run quite as smoothly as one would, under its circumstances, expect. Today, for example, its surface was broken by a very unexpected ripple, which had caused our friend considerable complexity and annoyance. After the conversation have noted about Barrymore. Sir Henry put on his hat and prepared to go out. As a matter of course, I did the same. What? Are you coming, Watson? He asked, looking at me in a curious way. That depends on whether you are going to the moor, I said. Yes, I am. Well, you know what my instructions are. I am sorry to intrude, but you heard how earnestly Holmes insisted that I should not leave you, and especially if you should not go alone upon the moor. Sir Henry put his hand upon my shoulder with a pleasant smile. My dear fellow, said he, Holmes, with all his wisdom, did not foresee some things which have happened since I have been on the moor. You understand me. I'm sure that you are the last man in the world who would wish to be a spoil sport. I must go out alone. To put me in a most awkward position, I was at a loss what to say or what to do. And before I made up my mind, he picked up his cane and was gone. But when I came to think the matter over, in my conscience reproached me bitterly for having any pretext allowed him to go out of my sight. I imagined my feelings would have had to return to you, and to confess that some misfortune had occurred through my disregard of your instructions. I assured you that my cheeks flushed at the very thought. It might not even now be too late to overtake him, so I set off in the direction of Merripit House. I hurried along the road at the top of my speed, without seeing anything of Sir Henry, until I came to the point where the moor path branches off. There, fearing that perhaps I had come in the wrong direction after all, I mounted a hill from which I could command a view, the same hill which is cut into the dark quarry. Thence I saw him at once. He was on the moor path about a quarter of a mile off, and a lady was by his side, who could not be anyone but Miss Stapleton. It was clear that there was already an understanding between them, and that they had met by appointment. They were walking slowly along in deep conversation, and I saw her making quick little movements of her hands, as if she were very earnest in what she was saying, while he listened intently, and once or twice shook his head in strong dissent. I stood among the rocks, watching them, very much puzzled as to what I should do next. To follow them and break into their intimate conversations seemed to be an outrage, and yet my clear duty was never for an instant to let him out of my sight. To act the spy upon my friend was a hateful task. Still, I could see no better course than to observe him from the hill, and to clear my conscience by confessing to him afterwards what I had done. It is true that if any sudden danger had threatened him, I was too far away to be any use, and yet I am sure that you will agree with me that the position was a very difficult, and that there was nothing more that I could do. Our friend Sir Henry and the lady had halted on the path, and were standing deeply absorbed in conversation, when I was suddenly aware that I was not the only witness of their interview. A wisp of green floating in the air caught my eye, and another glance showed me that it was carried by a stick by a man who was moving among the broken ground. It was Stapleton with his butterfly net. He was very much closer to the pair than I was, and he appeared to be moving in their direction. At this instant, Sir Henry suddenly drew Miss Stapleton to his side. His arm was around her, but it seemed to me that she was straining away from him, and her face averted. He stopped his head to hers. He stooped his head to hers, and she raised one hand as if in protest. The next moment I saw them spring apart and turn hurriedly around. Stapleton was the cause of the interruption. He was running wildly towards them, his observed net dangling behind them. His gesticulations and almost danced with excitement in front of their lovers. What the scene meant I could not imagine, but it seemed to me that Stapleton was abusing Sir Henry, who offered explanations which became more angry as the other refused to accept them. The ladies stood by in haughty silence. Finally, Stapleton turned upon his heel and beckoned in a peremptory way to his sister, who, after an irresolute glance at Sir Henry, walked off by the side of her brother. This naturalist's angry gestures showed that the lady was included in his displeasure. The baronet stood for a minute looking at them, and then he was walked slowly back the way he had come, his head hanging in the very picture of dejection. What this all meant I could not imagine, but I was deeply ashamed that to have witnessed so intimate a scene without my friend's knowledge. I ran down the hill, therefore, and met the baronet at the bottom. His face was flushed with anger, and his brows were wrinkled, like one who is wit's end what to do. "Hello, Watson. Where have you dropped from?" said he. "You didn't mean to say that you came all this way in spite of all." I explained everything to him. How I found it impossible to remain behind, how I had followed him, and how I had witnessed all that occurred. For an instant his eyes blazed at me, but my frankness disarmed his anger, and he broke at last into a rather rueful laugh. "You would have thought the middle of that prairie a fairly safe place for a man to be private," he said. "But by thunder, the whole countryside seems to have been out to see me doing my wooing, and a mighty poor wooing at that. Where did you engage a seat?" "I was on the hill." "Quite in the back row, eh? But your brother came up to the front of us. Did you see him come on us?" "Yes, I did." "Did he ever strike you as being crazy, this brother of hers?" "I can't say that he ever did. I dare say not, and I always thought him sane enough until today. But you can take it from me that either he or I ought to be in a straitjacket. What's the matter with me, anyway? You lived near me for some weeks, Watson. Tell me straight now. Is there anything that would prevent me from making a good husband to a woman that I loved?" "I should say not. He can't object to my worldly position, so it must be myself that he has this down on. What has he against me? I never hurt man or woman in my life that I know of, and yet he would not so much as let me touch the tips of her fingers." "Did he say so?" "That and a deal more, I tell you, Watson. I have seen her these few weeks, but from the first I just felt that she made for me, and she, too. She was happy when she was with me, and I'll swear that. There is a light in that woman's eyes that speak louder than words, but he has never let us get together, and it is only today for the first time that I saw a chance of having a few words with her alone. She was glad to meet me, but when she did not, it was not love that she would talk about, and she would not let me talk about it either if she could have stopped it. She kept coming back to it, that this place is of danger and that she would never be happy until I had left it. I told her that since I had seen her, it was no hurry to leave it, and that if she really wanted me to go, the only way to work was for her to arrange to go with me. With that, I offered her in many words to marry, as many words to marry. But before she could answer, down came her brother of hers, running at us with a face on him like a madman. He was just white with rage, and those light eyes of his were blazing with fury. What was I doing with the lady? How dare I offer her attentions which were distasteful to her? Did I think that I was a baronet, that I could do what I liked? If I could not be, if I could not have been her brother, I would have known better how to answer him. As it was, I told him that my feelings toward her sister were such as I am not ashamed of, and that I hoped that she might honor me by becoming my wife. That seemed to make the matter no better, so then I lost my temper too, and I answered him rather more hotly than I should perhaps say. So it was ended by his going off with her, as you saw, and here I am as badly puzzled a man as any in this county. Just tell me what it all means, Watson, and I'll owe you more than I could ever hope to pay. I tried one or two explanations, but indeed it was completely puzzled myself. Our friend's title had fortune, his age, his character, his appearance were all in his favor, and I know nothing against him unless it be this dark fate which runs in his family. That his advances should be rejected so brusquely without any reference to the lady's own wishes, and that the lady should accept the situation without protest, is very amazing. However, our conjectures were set at rest by a visit from Stapleton himself that very afternoon. He came to offer apologies for his rudeness of this morning, and after a long private interview with Sir Henry in the study, the upshot of their conversation was that the breach is quite healed, and that we were to dine at Merritt House next Friday as a sign of it. Don't say now that he isn't a crazy man, said Sir Henry. I can't forget the look in his eyes, but when he ran at me this morning. But I must allow that no man could make more handsome apology than he has done. Did he give an explanation of his conduct? His sister is everything to his life, he says. That is natural enough, and I am glad that he should understand her value. They have always been together, and according to his account, he has been a very lonely man with her only as a companion, so that the thought of losing her was really terrible to him. He had not understood, said he, that I was becoming attracted to her, but when he saw with his own eyes that it was really so, and that she might be taken away from him, it gave him such a shock that for a time he was not responsible for what he said or did. He was very sorry for all that had passed, and he recognized how foolish and how selfish it was that he should imagine that he could hold a beautiful woman like his sister to himself for her whole life. If she had to leave him, he had rather it be a neighbor like myself than anyone else. But in any case, it was a blow to him, and it would take some time before he could prepare himself to meet it. He would withdraw all oppositions upon his part if I could promise for 3 months to let the matter rest and be content with cultivating the lady's friendship during that time without claiming her love. This I promised, and so the matter rests. So there is one of our small mysteries cleared up. It is something to have touched the bottom where this bog is in the floundering. We know now why Stapleton looked with disfavor upon his sister's suitor, even when the suitor was so eligible as one as Sir Henry. And now I passed on to another thread, which I have extricated out of the tangled skein, the mystery of the sob at night, and of the tear-stained face of Mrs. Barrymore, of the secret journey of the butler to the western lattice window. Congratulate me, my dear Holmes, that I tell you that I have not disappointed you as an agent, that you do not regret confidence which you have shown in me when you sent me down. All these things have been one night's work, been thoroughly cleared. I have said by one night's work, but in truth it was by two nights' work, for on the first night we drew entirely blank. I sat up with Sir Henry in his rooms until 3 o'clock in the morning, but no sound of any sort did we hear except the chiming clock upon the stairs. It was a most melancholy vigil, and ended by each of us falling asleep in our chairs. Fortunately, we were not discouraged, and were determined to try again. The next night, we lowered the lamp and sat smoking cigarettes without making the least sound. It was incredible how slowly the hours crawled by, and yet we were helped through it by the same sort of patient interest which the hunter must feel as he watches the trap into which hope of the game he wander. One struck, and two, and we had almost for the second time given up for despair, when in an instant we both sat bolt upright in our chairs, with all our weary senses keenly on the alert once more. We heard the creak of steps in the passage. Very stealthily we heard it pass along until it died away in the distance. Then the baronet gently opened his door, and we set out in pursuit. Already our man had gone around the gallery, and the corridor was all in darkness. Softly we stole along until we had come into another wing. We were just in time to catch a glimpse of the tall, black-bearded figure, his shoulders rounded as he tiptoed down the passage. Then he passed through the same door as before, and the light of the candle framed in the darkness, and shot one single yellow beam across the gloom of the corridor. We shuffled cautiously towards it, trying every plank before we dared put our entire weight upon it. We had taken the precaution of leaving our boots behind, but even so, the old boards snapped and creaked beneath our tread. Sometimes it seemed impossible that he should fail to hear us in our approach. However, the man is fortunately rather deaf, and he is entirely preoccupied in which he was doing. When at last we reached the door and peeped through, we found him crouching at the window, candle in hand, his white, intent face pressed against the pane, exactly as we had seen him 2 nights before. We had arranged no plan of campaign, but Baronet is a man to whom the direct way is always the most natural. He walked into the room, and as he did so, Barrymore sprang up from his window with a sharp hiss of his breath, and stood livid and trembling before us. His dark eyes, glaring out of the white mask of his face, were full of horror and astonishment as he gazed from Sir Henry to me. "What are you doing here, Barrymore?" "Nothing, sir." His agitation was so great that he could hardly speak, and the shadows sprang up and down from the shaking of his candle. "It was the windows, sir. I I go around at night to see that they are fastened." "On the second floor?" "Yes, sir. All the windows." "Look here, Barrymore," said Sir Henry sternly. "We have made up our minds to tell the truth out of you, have the truth out of you, so it will save you the trouble to tell it sooner or later. Come now, no lies. What were you doing at that window? The fellow looked at us in helpless way, and he wrung his hands together like one who is in last extremity of doubt and misery. I was doing no harm, sir. I was holding a candle to the window. And why were you holding a candle to the window? Don't ask me, Sir Henry. Don't ask me. I give you my word, sir, that it is not my secret, and that I cannot tell you. If it concerned no one but myself, I would not try to keep it from you. A sudden idea occurred to me, and I took the candle from the trembling hand of the butler. He must have been holding it as a signal, said I. Let us see if there's any other. I held it as he had done, and stared out into the darkness of the night. Vaguely I could discern the black bank of the trees and the lighter expanse of the moor, for the moon was behind the clouds, and then I gave a cry of exultation, for a tiny pinpoint of light had suddenly transfixed in the dark veil, and glowed steadily in the center of the black square frame by the window. There it is, I cried. No, no, sir, it is nothing, nothing at all, the butler broke in. I assure you, sir. Move your light across the window, Watson, cried the baronet. See if the other moves also. Now, you rascal, do you deny this is a signal? Come, speak up. Who is your confederate out yonder, and what is that conspiracy that's going on? The man's face became openly defiant. It is my business, and not yours. I will not tell you. Then you will leave my employment right away. Very good, sir, if I must. And you will go in disgrace. By thunder, you may well be ashamed of yourself. Your family has lived with mine for over 100 years under this roof, and here I find you deep in some dark plot against me. No, no, sir. No, not against you. It was a woman's voice. Mrs. Barrymore, paler than horror-struck than his wife, was standing at the door. Her bulky figure in a shawl and skirt might have been a comic if not for the intensity of feeling upon her face. We have to go, Eliza. This is the end. You can pack our things, said the butler. Oh, John, John, have I brought this to you? It is my doing, Sir Henry, all mine. He has been doing nothing except for the sake and my sake, and because I asked him. Speak out, then. What does it mean? My unhappy brother is starving on the moor. We cannot let him perish at our very gates. The light is a signal for him that food is ready for him, and that the light is out yonder is to show the spot to where to bring it. Then your brother is the escaped convict, Sir Selden, the criminal. That is the truth, sir, said Barrymore. I said that it is not my secret, and I could not tell it to you. But now you have heard it, and you will now see that there is a plot. It was not against you. This, then, is the explanation of the stealthy expeditions at night, and the light at the window. Sir Henry and I were amazed at the woman in amazement. We stared at the woman in amazement. Was it possible that this stodily respectable person was of the same blood as one of the most notorious criminals in the country? Yes, sir. My name was Selden, and he is my younger brother. We humored him too much when he was a lad, and gave him his own way in everything, until he came to think that the world was made for his pleasure, and he could not do what he liked in it. Then he grew older, and met wicked companions, and the devil entered into him until he broke my mother's heart, and dragged our name in the dirt. From crime to crime he sank lower and lower, until it was only the mercy of God which has snatched him from the scaffold. But to me, sir, he was always the little curly-headed boy that I nursed and played with as an elder sister would. That was why he broke prison, sir. He knew that I was here, and that we could not refuse him. When he dragged himself here one night, weary and starving, with the wanderers hard at his heels, what could we do? We took him in and fed him and cared for him. Then you returned, sir, and my brother thought it would be safer on the moor than anywhere else until the hue and cry was over. So he lay in hiding there, but every second night we made sure that he was still there by putting a light in the window, and if there was an answer, my husband took out some bread and meat to him. Every day we hoped that he was gone, but as long as he was still there, we could not desert him. That is the whole truth, as I am an honest Christian woman, and you will see that if there is blame in the matter, it lies not with my husband, but with me, for whose sake he has done all of this. The woman's words came with intense earnestness, which carried conviction with them. Is this true, Barrymore? Yes, Sir Henry, every word of it. Well, I cannot blame you for standing by your own wife. Forget what I have said. Go to your room, you two. We shall talk further about this matter in the morning. When they were gone, we looked out the window again. Sir Henry had flung it open, and the cold night beat in upon our faces. Far away in the black distance, there was still glowed that one tiny point of yellow light. I wonder if he dares, said Sir Henry. It may be so placed as it may be so placed as to be only visible from here. Very likely. How far do you think it is? Out by the cleft door, I think. Not more than a mile or two off. Hardly that. Well, it cannot be far if Barrymore had to carry out that food. It is, and he is waiting, this villain, is by the candlelight. By thunder, Watson, I am going out to take that man. The same thought had crossed my own mind, and it was not as if the Barrymores had taken us into their confidences. Their secret had forced from them. The man was a danger to the community, an unmitigated scoundrel for whom there was either no pity, no excuse. We were only doing our duty in this, taking this chance of putting him back where he could do no harm. With his brutal and violent nature, others would have to pay the price if we held our hands. Any night, for example, our neighbors, the Stapletons, might be attacked by him, and it may have been the thought of this which made Sir Henry so keen upon the adventure. I will come, said I. Then get your revolver and put on your boots. The sooner we start, the better, as the fellow may be out his light and be off. In 5 minutes we were outside the door, starting upon our expedition. We hurried through the dark shrubbery, amid the dull moaning of the autumn wind and the rustle of the falling leaves. The night air was heavy with the smell of damp and decay. Now against the moon had peeped out for the instant, but the clouds were driving over our face of the sky. Just as we came out on the moor, a thin rain began to fall. The light still burned steadily in front. Are you armed? I asked. I have a hunting crop. Then we must close in on him rapidly, for he is said to be a desperate fellow. We shall take him by surprise and have him at our mercy before he can resist. I say, Watson, said the baronet, what would Holmes say to this? How about the hour of darkness in which the power of evil is exalted? As if in answer to his words, there rose suddenly out of the vast gloom of the moor that strange cry which I had already heard upon the borders of the great Grimpen Mire. It came with the wind through the silence of the night, a long, deep mutter, then a rising howl, and then a sad moan in which it died again. Again and again it sounded, the whole air throbbing with it, strident, wild, and menacing. The baronet caught my sleeve, and his face glimmered white with the darkness. Oh my God, what's that, Watson? I don't know. It sounds like we have. It's a sound they have on the moor. I've heard it once before. It died away, and an absolute silence closed in upon us. We stood straining our ears, but nothing came. Watson, said the baronet, it was the cry of a hound. My blood ran cold in my veins, for there was a break in his voice which told of the sudden horror which had seized him. What do they call this sound? He asked. Who? The folk on the countryside. Oh, they are ignorant people. Why should you mind what they call it? Tell me, Watson, what do they say of it? I hesitated, but it could not escape the question. They say it is the cry of the hound of the Baskervilles. He groaned and was silent for a few moments. A hound it was, he said at last, but it seemed to come from miles away over yonder there, I think. I was hard to It was hard to say whence it came. It rose and fell with the wind. Isn't that the direction of the great Grimpen Mire? Yes, it is. Well, it was up there. Come now, Watson. I didn't think you yourself that it was a cry of a hound. I am not a child. You need not fear to speak the truth. Stapleton was with me when I heard it last. He said that it might be the calling of a strange bird. No, no, it was a hound. By God, there be some truth in all these stories. Is it possible that I am really in danger from the dark a cause? You don't believe it, do you, Watson? No, no. And yet it was one thing to laugh about it in London, and it is another to stand out there in the darkness of the moor and to hear such a cry as that. And my uncle, there was a footprint of the hound beside him as he lay. All fits together. I don't think that I am a coward, Watson, but that sound seemed to freeze my very blood. Feel my hand. It was as cold as a block of marble. You'll be all right tomorrow. I don't think I'll get that cry out of my head. What do you advise that we should do? Shall we turn back? No, by thunder. We have come out to get our man, and we will do it. We are after the convict, and a hellhound as likely as not after us. Come on. We'll see it through if all the fiends on the pits were loosed upon the moor. We stumbled slowly along in the darkness, with the black loom of the craggy hills around us, and all yellow speck of light burning steadily in front of us. There is nothing so deceptive as the distance of a light upon the pitch dark night, and sometimes the glimmers seem to be far away upon the horizon, and sometimes it seems to have been within a few yards of us. But at last, we could see whence it came, and then we knew we were indeed very close. A guttering candle was stuck in the crevice of a rocks which flanked it on each side, as to keep the wind from it and also prevent it from being visible, save in the direction of Baskerville Hall. A boulder of granite concealed our approach, and crouching behind it, we gazed over it at the signal light. It was strange to see this single candle burning in the middle of the moor, with no sign of life near it. Just one straight yellow flame, and the gleam of the rock on which it sided. What shall we do now? Whispered Sir Henry. Wait here. He must be near his light. Let us see if we can get a glimpse of him. With words were hardly out of my mouth when we both saw him. Over the rocks, in the crevice of which the candle burned, there thrust out an evil yellow face, a terrible animal face, all seemed inscored with vile passions. Foul with mire and a bristling beard, and hung with the matted hair. It might well have been belonged to one of those old savages who dwelt in the burrows in the hillside. The light beneath him was reflected in the small, cunning eyes which peered fiercely to right and left through the darkness like a crafty, savage animal who has heard the steps of the hunters. Something had evidently aroused his suspicions. It may have been that Barrymore had some private signal which had neglected to give, or the fellow may have had some other reason for thinking all was not well. But I could read his face upon his wicked face. I could read the fears upon his wicked face. Any instant he might dash out in the light and vanish in the darkness. I sprang forward, therefore, and Sir Henry did the same. At the same moment, the convict screamed out a curse at us and hurled a rock which splintered upon each of the boulders that had sheltered us. I caught one glimpse of his short, squat, strongly built figure as he sprung to his feet and turned to run. At the same moment, by a lucky chance, the moon broke out through the clouds. We rushed over the brow of the hill, and there was our man running with great speed down the other side, springing over the rock stones in his way with the activity of a mountain goat. A lucky shot of my revolver might have crippled him, but I had brought it only to defend myself, if attacked, and not to shoot an unarmed man who was running. We were both swift runners and fairly good training, but we had soon found that we had no chance of overtaking him. We saw him for a long time in the moonlight, until he was only a small speck moving swiftly among the boulders upon the side of the hill. We ran and ran until we were completely blown, but the space between us grew even wider. Finally, we stopped and sat panting on two rocks while we watched him disappear in the distance. And it was at this moment that there occurred a most strange, unexpected thing. We had risen from our rocks and were turning to go home. Let's see here, guys. Sorry. Having abandoned the hopeless chase. The moon was low upon the right, and the jagged pinnacle of granite Tor stood up against the lower curve of its silver disk. There, outlined as black as ebony statue on that shining background, I saw the figure of a man upon the Tor. Do not think that it was a delusion, Holmes. I assure you that I have never seen in my life anything more clearly. As far as I could judge, the figure was that of a tall, thin man. He stood with his legs a little separated, his arms folded, his head bowed, as if he were brooding over that enormous wilderness of peat and granite, which lay before him. He might have been the very spirit of that terrible place. He was not the convict. This man was far from the place where the latter had disappeared. Besides, he was a much taller man. With a cry of surprise, I pointed him out to the baronet, but in the instant during which I had turned to grasp his arm, the man was gone. There was the sharp pinnacle of granite which still cutting the lower edge of the moon, but its peak bore no trace of that silent, motionless figure. I wished to go in that direction and search the Tor, but it was some distance away. The baronet's nerves were still quivering from the cry, which recalled the dark story of his family, and he was not in the mood for fresh adventures. I had not only seen this lonely man upon the Tor, but could not feel the thrill which his strange appearance and commanding attitude had given me. A wanderer, no doubt, said he. The moor has been thick with them since this fellow escaped. Well, perhaps this explanation may be right one, but I should like to have one further proof of it. Today we down Today we mean to communicate to the Princeton people where they should look for their missing man. But it is hard lines that we have not actually had the triumph of bringing him back as our own prisoner. Such are the adventures of last night, and you must acknowledge, my dear Holmes, that I have done you very well in the matter of a report. Much of what I tell you are no doubt quite irrelevant, but still I felt it best that I should let you know all the facts and leave you to select for yourself those which will be of most service to you in helping you to our conclusions. We are certainly making some progress. So far as the Barrymores go, we have found their motives of their actions, and that has cleared up the situation very much. But the moor, with its mysteries and its strange inhabitants, remains as inscrutable as ever. Perhaps in my next I will be able to throw some light upon this also. Best of all would it be if you could come down to us. In any case, you will hear from me again in the course of the next few days. And with that, we conclude chapters 7, 8, and 9 of Sherlock Holmes and the mystery, The Hound of the Baskervilles. Now, you guys may have noticed there was a brief interruption. First time in months. OBS decided to crash and burn on me. I'm grateful that it is recording. It's still recording to the main system. I apologize for any interruption on the system. We'll endeavor to make sure that that doesn't happen next week. When you get a chance, if you get a chance, I would really love it if you give me a like and subscribe. It helps us out quite a bit. This is the email. Give me a yell. Let me know how you guys are doing. Let me know where you guys are watching from. JoelK_OG at Comcast.net. As I mentioned on Thursday, we are working on possibly a new email. And we are trying desperately to get that going. Before we go, like we do at the other show on our channel here, we do a final quote for the week, and being this is the book club reading room, I thought this might be quite appropriate. You should not be afraid of someone who has a library and reads many books. You should fear someone who has only one book and he considers it sacred, but he has never read it. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. You should be afraid of someone who has a library and reads many books. You should fear someone who has only one book and he considers it sacred, but has never read it. Interesting. This is Accessibly Live, the book club reading room, every single Sunday night live here on Twitch and on YouTube. Every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. I appreciate everyone stopping by. Next week, chapters 10, 11, and 12 of The Hound of the Baskervilles. Be well, be safe, be kind. This was a long three chapters, guys. I appreciate everybody who stood along and kept listening and watching and enjoying. As I've said in the past, for when I'm reading, simply turn up the sound on the TV or the computer, turn down the lights, close your eyes, and let me read. Just like the librarians would do when we were young, and make it more enjoyable. No pictures, but we will definitely keep reading. Have a great night. Have a great week ahead. We will see you Thursday night for the conversation station. But we're going to get out of here. Take care, all. See you all Thursday night, and see you all next Sunday for the continuation of the Hound of the Baskervilles. Hound of the Baskervilles. Here on Accessibly Live, the Book Club Reading Room. Good night, all.